just goes to YouTube and Facebook for a little bit, and we'll let people in, and then we'll get rolling. So I'll basically be handing it off to you at this point, Morgan.
Sounds good.
Um, and you got your intro in there, and you've got the bio as well. And I'll start letting people in.
Great.
Hey everyone, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's great to have you here. I'm Ethan Janney, your past, host, along with David Anderson, and then we've got Morgan Cowell here, who's joining us from an actual job in a very fun location, doing some work, getting some stuff done. And I'm going to turn it over to Morgan for the first half of the session, and then I'm going to jump back in here. And he's going to give an intro to the session and give an intro to our guest for the day, who is Kestrel Curro. I'll pronounce it with the rolled R.
Very nice.
But yeah, so let me highlight the two of them, and I'll let them get started. Okay, and I'll be back in a little bit. Good to see you all here.
All right. Thanks, Ethan. All right, everyone. Welcome today to the Radio Hour. We gather each and every Saturday to meet and learn with the most really fascinating people that we can find within the piano world. We talk to anyone and anyone that's worth talking to. That includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, other makers as well. And that's all with the goal of becoming better at our craft. And to help one another create just kind of a better and musical world. This radio hour is brought to you by Piano Technician Masterclasses, which is an online resource that brings you cutting edge instruction from all the masters without leaving your home. You can find out more on the website. Got a little bit of news this week. Heard that the Steinway IPO is going to go up. That means that the Steinway will be listed on the New York Stock Exchange as something that you can go and buy a stock for, like you can with Apple or with Ford or with Tesla. And I thought that was really interesting. There's a lot of chatter online about that. So maybe there's some comments here we can have later on in the chat kind of about that. But let me talk about our guest here today. I first met him at a convention. It's pretty hard to miss with the beard, but he is a graduate from Ithaca College at the Conservatory of Music with a bachelor's in clarinet performance with Michael Galvin. He began studying piano technology with Don McKechnie, RPT, and Michelle Stranges. And he has experience with tuning, repair, regulation, and rebuilding since 2012, so a long time. He was a tuner tech at Lindenblad in 2018. And he held the position of staff piano technician at the Settlement School of Music in Philadelphia, where he maintained their inventory of 168 pianos and 3 harpsichords until the school decided to go virtual in September of 2020 due to COVID-19. So he currently provides some really quality in-home piano service and concert services for venues. He also enjoys his cats and nature. He has 3 cats. One's Mason, one's Hamlin, and one is Spinnet. And there's 2 dogs named Freddie and Bonkers. So welcome, Kestrel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Morgan. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm sitting here at a Steinway O, and life's good. So what made you, like your freshman year, want to hop into the piano side? Because you were with like clarinets, right? Like you'd think you'd go into more like woodwind tech. So why did you want to go to strings?
So I started with the clarinet, and I just really enjoyed playing the music. And I started writing it down and showing my teacher and getting all excited. And they sent me to lessons. And so I started taking lessons and just getting more into music. But I found I really enjoyed the instrument as like a tool more than the actual music part. So I accumulated quite a few more instruments, flutes and other things, to look at them and try to play them and make different sounds. and see what I could do with them. And because of that, I found a piano that I found my uncle wanted to get rid of a piano, and he gave me an old upright. I don't even remember what the brand was, but it didn't hold a tune. And our technician told us the pin block was shot and all of that. And we didn't know what that meant. So I just grabbed some of my dad's tools and I started having at this broken piano anyway. And I tried to make it sound better, and I got somewhere. But it wasn't until college that I had spent a few years in high school learning how to play it, just teaching myself whatever I could find, and using my clarinet music knowledge to be able to read the music, and then put it on the piano. And so when I got to college, I went to Don McKechnie at the end of my freshman year, and I said, I want to learn how to do this appropriately, because I've been messing around and I'm not satisfied with where I'm getting. So help me out. And he took me in and taught me how to tune for about a year. And then he started giving me other jobs. And eventually I was taking over the practice rooms and I was tuning those and keeping track of that for the other students while I was still getting a clarinet degree. So it kind of became my unofficial minor.
So let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of us get asked by kids all the time, like, hey, I want to do this. And like a week later, like they flake out or something. So was he kind of standoffish at first, like to share his knowledge and secrets with you, just being a freshman, this clarinet kid?
Yeah, he actually was a little bit, just in the fact that he said, usually I don't teach any sort of piano technology unless it's to a junior piano student, because they have to take a piano technology course. And usually that's where they start. And if they seem interested in the piano technology course, then he'll take them in and teach them a little more about tuning and other things, and then maybe send them off as a piano technician. But I came like 2.5 years early and said, I want to do this now. And I'm not even a piano student. And he said, well, I guess since you've been messing around with the piano at home, maybe I'll take you in. And he did. And I kept coming back, and he was impressed that I had such a motivation to continue. And then he offered me the job to clean the school pianos over the summer. So I took that, and it kept compounding from there until like senior year. I was, just walking around taking care of quite a lot of the student access pianos, like the classrooms and the practice rooms, and the main
That's kind of a life lesson, I think. So often we think we have to go through this whole plan, and wait to be asked. But with a lot of these situations, like you just have to go and, and just ask these people and see, hey, I'm serious, how can you help me? And you keep coming back and back and back, and eventually it pays off, or they like file like a restraining order on you or something, but
keep showing up until they tell you to go home.
Cool. So you graduated with your degree then from there?
Yes. So nice. I graduated Ithaca with a bachelor's in clarinet performance in May of 2015. And then I think I spent about a month or two enjoying post-college life. And I went to Freehold Music Center and I asked for a job as a technician there. And I was really ready to get going with piano stuff.
So, how was it different going from like college stuff to this music center? Was it much different? Were there any weird challenges or experiences?
Yeah, it was very different. I found out right away that the general public does not know very much about music or instruments or sound. And so as soon as they started sending me out to people's homes to do tuning for their company, I would say, this piano's so many cents flat or so many hertz flat, and they would go, I don't even know what that is. And I'd say it should be at 440, and they look at me like I have two heads. And and I realized very quickly, wow, I really need to change the way I speak to my clients if I'm going to get through about anything. So
absolutely. And I think that we're kind of like about the same age. So it's hard too when you're just a kid, right?
Yeah.
Like in their
Yeah,
eyes, especially.
I grew the beard for that reason.
I've heard that quite a bit, actually. We talked about
Yeah.
ties before, that works, and beards, and just kind of your whole demeanor, and how
Yeah.
that works. So would you think about scenarios before they happened? Meaning, like, say that you broke the plate, or like a string broke, or something. Like, would you like rehearse what you would say in those situations ahead of time?
I guess occasionally. I mean, the basic one of, your piano strings are rusty, your piano's old, it's very flat, it needs a pitch raise, that kind of preparation, but not like, if something crazy happened and the piano exploded, I wouldn't go, well, I was trying to, I wasn't thinking about that. That's silly. What a waste of time.
It's hard to say things with tact, though. And I know in my first a few years, I bet I went and looked at probably 75 old grand, right, that I knew like weren't savable, but I went out there anyways. And now I've kind of got to the point where I can ask enough questions and say, I don't think it's worth it for you and your family. But I took like a lot of rehearsing and a lot of just kind of
Yeah.
trial and error.
Well, a little bit of polish to your business professionalism,
Sure. Talk about some mistakes that you made early on. Let's be honest and real here. Maybe you didn't, but I broke a lot of things just by being stupid. I'd break off a hammer shank, or I'd spill something, or I put a grand piano through a wall once.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember I did something like that, but it was a brick wall, so the piano got more of it than the wall. But I've joined the club of breaking note 88 hammer shank when pulling an action. I've had a string break on me here and there. I think the only one I ever purposefully broke was I was so mad when I was learning on the broken piano my uncle gave me. I couldn't get this false beat to work, and I just was so mad I broke the string myself. I just tightened it and it snapped, and that was it. I was like, well, so much for that. Guess that's what happened.
So after that, after college, went to that music, was it an academy or school or the center, music center, right?
Settlement? What?
After school.
Where did I go?
Yeah, you went to that music center, is that right?
Yeah, it was a music store. It was a piano
store. Okay. What brands did they carry?
They did mostly Yamaha. They still had some Kawai at that time.
Okay.
And a very large section of pre-owned pianos. That's kind of what they focused on a lot of, was just having a lot of pianos available from a lot of different places.
Did you get to do like a lot of kind of like rehab on them and stuff, and rough regulations, voicing, things like that?
They had an in-shop technician who kind of showed me a few things.
Nice.
To get me going. So
then a few years later, you went to Lindenblad, right?
Yep. About 2 years after Freehold Music Center.
Okay. And what was that like?
It was very different than Freehold, because it was more about really getting inside the pianos and all the way stripping them down to very basic rails and all of that. Whereas the music store was more about, get them sellable. But Lindenblad really about tear it completely apart and rebuild it completely, as a restoration place would be. So that's where I learned how to not be afraid of touching pianos anywhere. And I couldn't lose anything in them anymore either.
So let's talk about that more. So when you're just kind of like fixing things, it's a different mindset than when you're actually like replacing things or thinking like, hey, the manufacturer did it this way, but like this way actually might be better. And now that it's here in the shop all the way apart, I can do X, Y, and Z. There's something that kind of changes in the way that you just solve problems and the way that you, I just kind of, I don't know, just kind of carry yourself. Or did you find like something similar with that, or understand things in a different way, or anything like that?
I think you just have to approach the parts differently, because if you're approaching old parts, you know that they're old and they have some wear on them. And, one side of the cushion is going to be squished more than the other side. But with the new parts, they're fresh and they're, very new. Like the springs, especially, are very tight.
Sure.
So you got to understand that when you go in, the springs are going to be very tight. So understand that even if you weaken them enough, they're still going to be tight. They're still going to be new. Whereas the old ones, it's like, all right, can I get this tight enough to work? And you just kind of have to approach it from is this going to work, or is this going to be amazing?
Sure. Okay. And then you left there eventually, right? And you went to this next school with 168 pianos. Were you the only technician on staff then for all that many pianos?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
It was certainly a lot to do. I would have like tuning seasons. I mean, I'm sure anybody would, but I would spend 2 months just tuning all the pianos at 7 a day. So, and there wasn't a whole lot more I could do. And, with schools, the HVAC systems throw them out. So here I am tuning, getting through half of them. And then I'm getting complaints that the first half are already out of tune again in the middle of January. And it's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I still have another 80 pianos to tune. So
I had that exact same problem.
Yeah.
There's one school where I will leave pianos flat, like really flat, like in the winter time, because I know that by like March they're going to be sharp again, and it's not worth trying to fight it. And yeah, but 168. But then harpsichords too. Were you trained with harpsichords at all, like prior to being there at the school?
I did have some experience at Ithaca. Yeah. Once Don felt I got comfortable enough with pianos and the basics, he took me over to the harpsichords that they had and had me tune them, I think once or twice.
Okay.
So I had some idea of that.
But once you got there, though, you probably had to do like some restringing stuff and maybe some regulation issues and whatnot.
Well, they told me not to focus too much on the harpsichords. I think there was only like one chamber group that used them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And there was so much to do with the pianos that they said, focus on the pianos, do the harpsichords, maybe if you have time. So
sure. What was the biggest like repair job that you found there at the school? Like for example, with this O that I'm working on right now, all the balance holes are binding, and it just doesn't play well at all. And that's something that like around here that's commonly overlooked, but it makes a huge difference in regulation. Was there something maybe at school that you kind of saw that was maybe like an obvious thing that we should all look for, but that you kind of discovered during your time there? That's a weird question, I know, but
I guess the one thing I found that made me realize my regulations weren't as good as they could be is leveling the keys.
Okay.
I was going around and I was adjusting strike distance and whipping spring tension and capstans, well, strike distance. But I was doing the stack regulation more so than I was doing keys. And then I started noticing that these keys were not at all level and they had big dips in them from being played so much. And I realized, wow, I really need to go through and level these keys before a lot of this other stuff is even going to work. And I had hoped that the stack stuff would be enough that the piano would be better, but You really got to level the keys on. It's amazing how many things there are in a piano action that you have to do, and they're all connected. And if you don't do one, the other ones don't really work. I mean, maybe they'll look like they work, but they don't really work. You know?
Absolutely. I think it was Eric Johnson said once that you really can't like voice a piano until it's been regulated.
Yeah.
And but that's not true, right? Because you can spend like 10 minutes like voicing down the treble section like of a young Cheng that's not regulated, right? They're used to voicing, but what he was getting at, and what I've kind of learned over the last couple of years, is that you aren't voicing to the piano's like full potential unless you do like all the
right. Okay, that's
all
what
the
I thought
prior steps. Yeah, I was just slow on on what he was meaning, but yeah, that's an interesting kind of learning how all that works. So now you work privately, right? You work for yourself?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you're in the New Jersey area, is that right?
Yes, I'm like more southern central Jersey. I'm about a half hour east of Philadelphia.
Okay. I'll be in Philly actually at the end of this month. I'm going to go take a class with the poly class with Allied Piano. Are there many technicians in your area?
There's a couple. There's one that's right near me, about 15 minutes. He actually was the technician at Settlement before I got there. So I know him through that, but he's kind of retiring. So I'm kind of taking over the business in this area slowly. There's a few others I've looked up, but it doesn't seem like there's very many technicians in this area.
I think that's a global problem. Cool. So what is something that you pay attention to that maybe most people don't? And this could be within the industry or just kind of in life in general. It's another like curveball question, but we ask it to everyone. So it had some really good responses.
I think I focus a lot on my costume, and I think other people don't always focus on their costume. I mean, sure, they dress up, they look presentable, they look professional, but if you don't have like a brand and a group of colors and a specific look that you want to present to your clients, I think you don't get noticed as much. You have to rely more on, well, I know this guy and he's really good, so hire him, and he shows up and he doesn't look like much, but he's really good. But, if you hire somebody and they show up and they have, a shirt devoted to this business with their logo on it and maybe their name and, a matching hat or something like that.
Sure.
Something to really solidify your business, yourself,
Sure. Now you use the word costume, or I think most of us might say uniform or appearance. Oh, was that intentional, or? I think of costume as being more, I don't know. It was an interesting word choice. It just caught me off guard.
Yeah, I've always loved costumes. I've always been into costumes. So that's kind of what I was thinking more. But I wear this to go to work, and then I come home. I don't wear it anymore, and I guess you could consider that a uniform. But I like the
idea of. I like the idea of costume though, because like you like make like an internal like decision to be this for a certain period of time, and then you come home and you're no longer that person like in the same capacity. I think that's different than a uniform, which is like required by work, right? Like this is like an intentional, like this is who I'm going to be,
right,
for this reason, like for this client, and it's working. That's an interesting thought there.
I have to put on a show for my clients. Essentially, I go in, I present myself, I talk about their piano, I fix their piano, I ask if they have any questions, and then I leave. So it's essentially, it's a show, it's an interactive show.
Yeah. Because there's times where you don't want to actually say what you're thinking at all. Or
Oh
maybe you're
yeah.
having a really bad day, like life's getting you down, but like your customers don't need to see that. So that's where you are, that you actually are acting in a sense,
Right. That's not
for
why you're there.
everyone's benefit. Yeah,
You're not there to share your political opinions or your house life. You're there to fix their piano.
that's true. I like that. Uh, let's talk about tools because I'm a tool guy, and I know that you have a lot of tools too, don't you? Like you like
Yeah.
mechanical things and building things. What's a tool that you have and use all the time that you don't think most technicians have, or that we all should carry?
Wow. Hmm.
I know these are hard questions.
I guess maybe a cart, but that's only for specific situations.
Okay. Uh, like last week, we had Ed Foote say that the balance hole reamer is a very important tool to have with you. And if I had to pick one, I'd probably say either my compass point needler or my dental pick. I use that thing almost every day for multiple jobs. So,
Well,
yeah.
I guess, I do have a screwdriver that I sharpen the tip of and made very small, and I use it kind of like a very tiny chisel. Or if there's a very narrow screw head notch that I need to get at, I'll use that screwdriver. It's like a chisel screwdriver almost. It's only like 3/16 wide. I mean, it's very small.
Interesting.
But,
Okay.
I guess that's something.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some things with the newsletter thing that you like to do, as well as some things with the small, like mini pianos that you make. Get ready, guys.
Hey guys.
These are really neat things. Oh, we got Ethan back here. But just one last thing on this topic. What are maybe a couple things that you would recommend to a new technician, right? That kind of wants to follow the same path that you took. What's some advice you give to them?
To a new technician who wants to be a piano technician? Is that what you mean? Somebody like that?
Yeah. Say like a kid calls you up tomorrow and says, "Hey, I want to get into this business. What do I have to do?" What's some basic advice that you would give them?
Practice communicating with people.
Okay.
Because that's very important. That's probably the most important. You can't sell your work if you can't communicate.
And how do you practice that yourself?
By trying to be more extroverted. By actually starting conversations instead of just joining in.
Okay. I know that's hard to do at something like a national convention, or even like a PTG meeting, or even like a music concert, right? It's easy to be kind of quiet in the corner, but it's lost myself here. But it makes a huge difference when you're the one that's initiating those conversations. That you get a lot of clients and just a lot of neat people that way. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But welcome back, Ethan. Want to take it over for a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So how much did we get into the newsletter stuff? Because
not one bit.
Not one bit. Okay, awesome. Well, let's shift discussion topics unless anybody had a question or comment they wanted to bring into the conversation. So, Castro, you've spoken a little bit about your newsletter before, and I don't know. It's a bit of a task for a piano technician to keep up with a newsletter. And so it might be interesting. I don't know how many of us actually that might be interesting if you do some sort of a newsletter. Maybe raise your hand or put a comment in the chat or something like that. It'd be interesting to see. But yeah, I think I'd love to get a little bit of insight on how you got into keeping a newsletter and what you find the advantages are and stuff like that. So let's just start with the background. How long after you were an active piano technician did you start putting out a newsletter and is it to your clients or is it more of a general community newsletter?
Okay, so I was working at Freehold Music Center, and pretty much right after that, I went to Linda Blad kind of a little bit later, but I had started my business right after I left Freehold Music Center, and that was July of 2017. So right at that point, I decided, okay, I'm gonna start my business. I'm gonna be focused on this as just me doing this. So I need to communicate with my clients, and I decided to start writing a newsletter. Later, finding out that there is literature that PTG, Piano Technicians Guild, offers for this specific thing. I looked over it a little bit, and it wasn't what I wanted to say or as much as I wanted to say. So I decided, okay, I really need to continue doing this, and so far it just keeps getting better. So I'm happy
Cool.
with it.
So it was, yeah. And by the way, I don't know if I've worked directly for those companies that you named, but I was kind of in the environment because like I went to Rutgers University
Oh, okay.
in New
Yeah.
Jersey, and I started tuning, in those areas. At the time when I first started, the company was East Coast Piano, which I don't think is in business anymore. But I worked for East Coast Piano for that was how I cut my teeth in the
Nice.
piano tuning business. And maybe I've got referred a couple of tunings from like Freehold Music Center and Linda Blad. I remember working with them a little bit, but not extensively. So fun, we share that background. So you got independent, and you said that you'd like to start trying this. So, but what was it like sending out that first email? Because I know for me, like the first time I sent out the first email, you hit send, even if it's just going to 5 or 10 people or a
Hmm.
hundred or 1,000, or it's like, oh man, like everybody's gonna see this. Do I have a typo? Does this sound stupid? What do I say? What was that like, just kind of sending out your first email newsletter?
Well, my first newsletter was the care and feeding of your piano. So it was basic information about how often you should tune it, how often maybe you should clean it. It's going to need regulation eventually, that kind of basic care stuff. Keep it away from vents, you know. So I think I'd only had a few email addresses, like you said, like maybe 10, a dozen, something like that. And I hadn't figured it out yet. So I sent it out and I CC'd everybody on it. And I didn't know what BCC was at that point. So so I get an email back that says, "Oh, please BCC next time because I don't want people to have my email," and so on and so forth. And it was it was an interesting first newsletter, but I think it went well. I learned a lot.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, those are tough mistakes. I mean, in general, uh, I guess time passes, right? And people
Mm.
people get emails that are difficult here and there every once in a while. But as long as you kind of wrap it up and you say, "Hey, I'm so sorry," and apologize for it, that sounds reasonable. So, did you at some point start using like an email service, like a Mailchimp or something, or do you still
Hmm.
just kind of do a bunch of BCCs, or how do you take care of it?
Yeah, after maybe I got to 30 people or something like that, it was just too much to do just for email. And I think even Google was starting to say, all right, you're starting to look like you're spamming people, so you better stop. And I was like, all right, I better find something new. So I found MailChimp. I don't remember how. I think I might have heard it from somebody else about newsletters or advertising or something. And I said, hey, maybe I'll try that. And I tried it, and it seems to work pretty well. So I'm happy with it.
Great. And how many emails have you sent out at this point? Do you keep track, or like has your email
Yes.
list grown quite a bit? What's the sort of progression?
So I think I have about 280, 300 people signed up for my newsletters, and maybe 110 open them every month. So that's where I'm at right now.
That sounds like a pretty solid open rate, because you'll get 20%, 10%, 5% open rate sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
on emails.
Sometimes they're not so great, but sometimes, whatever it is, like the Yamaha newsletter got almost a 50% open rate.
Very
And
cool.
and the one before it got a 22% or something. So whatever it was, I don't remember.
And what is Carl saying here? Oh, Carl says, why not just have a blog on your website? What is the value of putting that information into an email? And then also on that topic, do you also publish the same information as a blog on the website? How do you manage that?
Um, I don't know. I've never really looked into blogs or been interested in blogs. So I've, newsletters have always been effective for other people. And so I figured I'd just jump on that and send them out. And then every time I send one out, usually a month or two later, I'll put it on my website. So they're all listed on my website.
But you wait to release it a little bit. I mean, I have an answer to that question. I mean, if you all get emails from me, right? So I've had my experiences with emails and keeping a list and sending them out. And I think one of the values of not just putting it on the website is it's more of like a personal relationship when you send emails. And I'll ask you more about that, Kestrel, too. But it's easier for people to reply, send a little comment back, than just put a comment on a website. Sometimes that's a little less easy to do, or maybe people don't want to make that public comment or things like that.
Yeah, and I used to use before I got Gazelle, I used my newsletters as a reminder too. So it wouldn't specifically say, your piano needs to be tuned, but it would be, here's something about pianos from your piano technician. Hopefully that'll be enough of a nudge that maybe you'll get your piano tuned. So I used to use them as reminders. And if I just post on my blog, I don't know, I guess maybe you could send an email every time I post, but it just seems like a nice formatted thought once a month seems good to me.
Yeah, and by the way, there is a service called Substack, which I've used for another project, which kind of does both. Like you can have it put on a site, kind of like a blog. It lives on the Substack kind of platform, but that same message also goes to people who are subscribed via email. So it's an interesting way to easily combine the two things.
Okay. I would say with blogs, though, you have to be careful because one, you can clutter your website real fast, which kind of distorts who you are sometimes. But secondly, say that you like really into it for 3 years and then you drop off and your last post is from 2019. Someone coming to your website thinks that you're out of business because you haven't updated your post anymore. So either delete the timestamps or like make that kind of a hidden feature because it's an interesting thing that I've heard from other people before.
That's a good point. Yeah, but also like publishing to the blog can be very valuable, especially if it's the topic that people search about, right? One that we had on our blog for Floating Piano Factory, it was just like how to find a good used piano, for example, right? So a lot of people are curious, like what kind of ways that you're going to evaluate that, parameters to look for, and little hint tips and tricks about getting that piano. And of course, then at the end of the article, you could say, oh yeah, and by the way, if you're in New York City and you want to get a used piano or a new piano, here we are. You can schedule an appointment, something like that. So that you do get the like SEO benefit if you do put some of this stuff on a blog. I want to definitely get to, I think maybe in the next 5 or 10 minutes, make sure we get to your small pianos because they're pretty awesome. Okay. But I want to ask a couple more questions, and if anybody else has, that was a great question, Carl. Get to anybody else's questions. How have you seen, because you've written emails for a bit now, how have you seen it evolve, like your concept? What have you learned in the process? Have you changed certain parameters based on feedback you get from people that like respond or tell you, hey, they read this or whatever? How have things evolved for you for newsletters?
Well, I think unfortunately I don't get a lot of feedback, so I kind of have to work through it with whatever I can come up with. But I know just in myself and writing them, I've gotten a lot more confident in saying what I want to say and putting it in a nice sentence structure with, my own voice and all of that. So I'm not so, on eggshells or being too predictable or too, I don't know, too polished about it. And
right. It's just like the practice of doing it over and over again. You just feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Like it used to take me weeks to finish one, and now it takes me couple days.
Right.
So,
But that sounds actually nice too, right? Like you are putting a couple days into it, right? You're not just putting like 5 minutes and spitting something out there. You're putting some time, thought, and energy into it, which I'm sure the people who, receive those, appreciate. What about is there anything you learned from, you said you had some Yamaha related email that got like a really good open rate. Do you feel like you learned anything from the more successful emails about, moving forward, topics covered, subject lines, content, anything like that?
I think, well, last year I did an entire series of just piano manufacturers, which is the first time I've done anything that focused for that period of time in my newsletters. And I think I got the best response and the biggest open rate from the manufacturers. And when I talk to people, they seem to remember the various manufacturers more so than they remember something about humidity. So I'd say if people are going to read about pianos, they want to really read about pianos and not how things affect pianos. But the way things affect pianos is so important. So I got to write about that too, as a reminder anyway.
But yeah, that's definitely good information. And I think even if people don't give you that feedback, those open rates and click rates and things like that give you passive feedback on what's more interesting to people, what do they find useful, stuff like that. And just the general advice, if people haven't gotten it, is if you're answering questions that people have, if anybody ever asks you a question as a piano technician, it's a great topic for a blog or an email.
Yes.
But what I love about the piano manufacturers thing is if you, as a piano technician, want to like brush up on your knowledge of anything specific, you can go ahead and decide to create an email series on it. And as you do the research, you get smarter, right?
Right.
So your clients get smarter, you get smarter. That's one of the
Exactly.
things that I really love about that. Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I send out in the welcome letter to my newsletters. Is it says, thanks for choosing Carl Piano Service. I write these newsletters to keep us both interested in the world of pianos. So I do use it for research. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love these, like if nobody can tell, like I love these kind of high leverage activities you can participate in. There's actually a book, it's not piano related at all, but it's called the last safe investment is the name of the book. And it's a book all about how you can participate in certain activities in your life that have a higher return on investment just by the nature of what they are. And it's not there's sometimes a financial return, sometimes like a quality of life return. I think us as piano technicians, we're very familiar with this as like quality of life. Oh, we're a piano technician, we get the quality of life piece, we get the income, we get to meet interesting people. It's those interesting places of leverage that this book highlights. And it highlights things like what we're doing here, like having a meeting where two people can have a conversation, other people can benefit, other people can listen in, I can learn something, you can learn something. It really leverages things up a little bit. So I can see a newsletter really has that impact as well, even if you just write it for yourself. There's a lot of people, I think, that start writing a newsletter or a blog. What is it called? Atomic Habits is a great book about that. If you want to look up a book, I'll think of the author, but the book is called Atomic Habits. And the guy just said, I'm going to write a blog post like once a week for XYZ or whatever. And he just got better and better and better and better at it as he did it. At the beginning, it didn't matter if anybody was reading. And by the time he kept, atomic means like a small habit, like an atom, but it's also atomic because it's like explosive and it's really powerful. He just kept this atomic habit of writing the blog. And then a few years later, he's writing like a best-selling book, right? And just taking those articles that he wrote and, expanding upon them in this type of content. So very cool.
I had I had a piano teacher client actually. I was talking to her about voicing and regulation and stuff, and she said, "You're gonna have to take some time with me or you're gonna have to let me take time to learn these things because I don't know them." And I thought, that's what I do with my newsletters. I just keep talking and hope people get something out of it. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think Kevin asked how often you release it. I think you said once a month. Is that correct?
yes, monthly, and I try very hard to get it on the first. So it's very consistently released on the morning of the first, so people know it's going to be there.
Cool. Yeah, just one more thing I'll highlight before we move on to your small piano practice. It's that by doing this, you learn how to communicate, like you said, with your clients, right? You learn that, oh, maybe you want to teach them about humidity control, but maybe they like to learn a little bit more about piano brands first, right? Before you get into some technical thing that it might not even catch their attention, right? So you learn the languages that they speak in. They care about piano brands, they care about piano models or whatever it is that matters to them. And then you use that as like a bridge into the educational stuff that, that you think that they should know, but they might not know that they should know.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, let's talk about your little piano habit. I've got some photos I'm going to share on Facebook, and I guess we'll just use them as a conversation starter, and we'll wrap up our session as we talk about those. So I'll do a screen share. And here I am on Facebook. This is Kuro Baby Grant on Facebook, and this is his photo gallery. And so we'll use this as an interesting point of departure. So I don't know, should I just open up? I'm gonna open just one picture here because it'll be an example of what we're talking about here. It's just like, were you making these when you were working for Linda Blad and the other piano stores and things like this? Something you got into when you're more of an independent technician? How long have you been making these micro pianos?
I think about right when I started off on my own, I started making little pianos. So my reasoning for why I started making little pianos is because I was being a piano technician and I had a house that had a leaky basement that was very difficult to get anything into, and that was where my shop was. So it was okay to do things off of the ground, but if there was ever any minimal flooding, a piano would get damaged. So I thought, well, I can't get real pianos in here, so I'll put little pianos in here. And so I started making little pianos, and I just took some scrap wood and glued it together and carved it out, painted it, and tried to make it look like a piano. And I brought it to a chapter meeting, and I got lots of feedback. Like the first one, I made the strings going in the wrong direction, the coils. So you would have to tune it backwards, essentially. Just little things like that. And then I said, okay, I can do better than this. And I took some real measurements of a piano and I made a better one. And it still wasn't good enough. So I made another one that had actual 88 keys. And it's just every time I make one, I try to make it a little bit more detailed. So
and this is interesting. It kind of mimics this atomic habits idea that we just brought up, right? And it's actually even a little piano, like an atomic piano. And so, like, let's see here. This is your insignia on there, Kuro Baby Grand.
Fall board. That's the fall board name. Yep.
Very cool. And then this is a little bit of give you a sense of the size of that. How do you decide like how small to make it? Because you could make it like twice this size and probably still be in a manageable area. Like is there a scale that is it like 1/10? Is it 1/100th?
Yeah,
like
it's 1/12. So 1 inch equals 1 foot.
Okay.
And then I just go from there.
Is that a nod to the like temperament 12 notes, or is that just because of 1 inch out of a foot?
No, I never thought about it like that, but yeah, I guess it could be, but no, I just did 1/12. It's a very common scale in like dollhouse and miniature stuff. which is a whole nother community out there that most of us probably don't even realize exists. But there's miniature artisans and a guild, just like the Piano Technicians Guild, and they just make miniature things, and there's all different scales. But this is I think that was a ruler I made that had 10 notches between each inch.
Oh, okay. Got it. So like a
I
homemade
don't
ruler
remember.
that has its, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I feel like you need to do something with the 12th root of 2 though for the scaling in some way, just to really make it difficult. Um, this is cool. I like that we have like a mini, Steinway factory going on here with the. Now,
yeah,
are these bent like around a mold, or are these just cut out with like a jigsaw?
they're just cut out. I had thought about wanting to do bending, and I do bend the bridges when I add bridges later, but I've never bent the rim.
Okay.
I just never had.
All right. Sometime soon. I
Uh,
love this as a project that's evolving and seeing like what you decide to do with each
and
iteration.
this was the only time I ever made a large group of them at the same time. The first three I made each one at a time individually, and then I guess it was 3 through 8. I said, all right, I've got somewhat of a design down that I'm happy with. I'm just going to make a whole bunch of these parts so I can just put them together quick and then have some inventory. So that's what
Inventory.
this
I like
project
that.
was. This was
Nice.
a self-test, I guess.
Got it. These look beautiful. What are we looking at here?
So that's
Oh,
part of the plate.
wow. And how are those created?
Two pieces of wood, and then I kind of route it out and carve it and shape it, sand it, and then paint it gold.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it looks quite metallic. You've achieved that. And this looks like actual brass. Is that what that is from Brass Rods?
Brass rod, yep. So that's what I used to do. I have a flat piece now that is a little bit easier to shape.
Yeah, that looks difficult.
Yeah.
Leave it up to a piano technician to like just do something that just is difficult just because I want to.
And make all the tools to do it myself too.
There you go. Yeah, right. Yeah, and then sell them. Have a dream of selling them on Piano Tech.
Yeah.
Becoming a millionaire. Cool. And then this lid actually looks like an actual hinge. The lid opens.
Yeah, there's a miniature marketplace, Micromark, and they sell what's called miniature piano hinges, and that's what that is.
Oh wow. And so okay. Well, it sounds like you've got competition too. We have to watch out for. But that goes back to my other question: do you have like patrons? Like, are there people who like? Is this just for your sole practice and pleasure, or do you have like clients who like I want one of those? Like, what? Or is that
Yeah,
something
I've
that
sold them.
yeah, you've sold them? All right,
I've actually sold one to the PTG, believe it or not.
nice.
Yeah. So
Well, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, this is where your dues are going. Did it go in like the museum or something?
No, it was the chapter in North Jersey. The place where we would meet was owned by a piano salesman person, and he would let us meet there, and he became sort of an honorary chapter member because we were always there and he was always kind of involved. So we decided to give him a gift one time, and we were trying to figure out what to give him. And I think somebody said, what about one of Kestrel's little pianos?
Nice.
And so I made a stand with a plaque for him and everything, and we gave it to him. And then we found out after we gave it to him, he collects miniature pianos. So it was the perfect gift.
Oh, that's awesome. And what did one of these things run? Do you mind me asking? Are we talking like 50 grand or like
Oh, not that much.
150,
No,
150,000 maybe? No.
500.
Okay. All right. That's reasonable. And I understand these are is this your first
This was
attempt?
the first one I actually hand carved out the middle section. So it's not multiple pieces, it's one piece. And I put way too many pins in there for all the tuning pins, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing stuff.
Yeah, that's And this is the same thing?
Yep. Yeah, we should move on to some of the more modern ones.
Yeah. So yeah, let me oh shoot, I accidentally got out of that view. We'll get back to it in a second. Okay, so tell me so now we're at the top of the page. Tell me something to look at
yeah,
from the
so
more recent items.
these are the more recent ones. So
Should I just pop this one?
The silver plate one, or that's the square grand I'm working on. It's a little bit more progressed than that, but that was kind of fun.
Oh, the silver plate one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so experimenting with different colors. That's number 14.
Very cool. Now, have you thought of like incorporating like 3D printing or anything like that, or is it more the craftsmanship of like carving this stuff out that you enjoy?
Yeah, a lot of people have said 3D printing, and it's not much fun to 3D print when I could be carving it with my hands.
Gotcha.
Right?
That makes sense.
It's more unique this way too, I think.
Yeah, totally. And the strings, are those like, those aren't actual pianos. Like, what do you use for those?
Right now I'm using like jewelry wire mostly.
Very cool. This looks pretty solid too.
So I call this one the naked piano.
Okay.
Because it essentially doesn't have any color finish anywhere. It's strictly wood tone. Even the plates.
I like the blue felt.
Yeah.
And that's felt, or is that paint?
No, that's felt.
Cool.
Nice little piece of stick-on felt, works wonders.
And these are the pedals that are from flat.
Yeah, yeah. A little better.
Nice finish on that. Yeah, looks pretty solid.
Those are the chunkier old legs too. A little bit older design.
Well, this is pretty cool. Anything else I should share before we wrap up the session? Like another image that we haven't seen that's worth highlighting?
I think the Chopin piano there.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely my favorite. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I copied straight strung Erard 85 keys, hand painted oil painting on the lid. Painted it myself.
That's pretty solid. That one's I'm guessing that's more than a 500 because that's pretty custom.
I even had Chopin made for it because I'm a crazy person, I guess.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, we're all a little bit crazy here. I think we've established that, so we'll celebrate our craziness. Cool. All right. Well, if anybody wants to check this out more, you can go to Kuro Baby Grand on Facebook, and you can check out Kestrel by searching him online. Check out his website. Sign up for his newsletter if you like. Anything else you want to highlight for people before I sign us out of the session for today?
I don't think so. Just remember to keep communicating with people because they may not communicate with you, but they want to hear from you.
That sounds good. Yeah. And the more practice you get at it, the better it works. So I love that. All right. Well, we've reached the end of another musical journey here today at Piano Tech Radio Hour. So thanks a lot to Kestrel Curro for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it has been great. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that joined us today by signing up for the session individually, you can make your life more convenient by subscribing to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. And you can sign up for that at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com/PTRH-direct access. And I'll put that link in the chat because that's more complicated to type than to say. But yeah, beyond that, thanks a lot to everyone for joining. And we really appreciate you all being here with us today. Have a good one.